No matter where you live, what you do, who you are, all of us are reliant on land. And how we use our land, the decisions we make, bind us together, determine the condition of our planet and the quality of our lives. So let's look at the root of these decisions, at the seed of an idea that inspired the path forward, planted 3 generations ago, and still growing strong. It all began in Cleveland, Ohio, at the dawn of the 20th century. Cleveland was the Silicon Valley of its day, a center of technology and innovation. Here, working in the same era as Edison, Westinghouse, and Tesla, John Cromwell Lincoln founded Lincoln Electric with $200 in savings. He began by designing components for an electrified streetcar system and pioneered the use of electricity in welding, which would revolutionize construction and manufacturing practices worldwide. From an early age, John showed a knack for inventing things and possessed a strong moral sense of justice. It wasn't long before his restless mind moved beyond electricity. John Lincoln grew up during the Gilded Age, a time of extreme inequality when the richest 4,000 families possessed more wealth than the rest of America put together. One source of this wealth was the increasing value of land because of development. When he was 23, John attended a lecture by one of the leading thinkers of the time, economist Henry George. George argued that by taxing land according to its value, the benefits of growth would be shared more equally by all people. And since public investment in the railroad and other utilities drove surrounding land values up, it was only fair that the public, not wealthy land speculators, should capture this financial gain. George's vision made a huge impact on John Lincoln, speaking to the sense of fairness instilled in him by his faith and family. Years later, John left his still growing company in the able hands of his brother and partner James and moved his family to Arizona, where he continued a life of innovation and philanthropy. But as the country continued to grapple with issues of social inequality, Henry George's idea remained firmly fixed in John's mind. In 1946, he established the Lincoln Foundation to, in his own words,
seek through the dissemination of proven truth to change the standards of economic education and of public opinion, and thus contribute to a more just and productive life for free men and women.
75 years later, that foundational idea continues to guide an organization focused on the use, taxation, and stewardship of land. And today, John Lincoln's vision has given rise to the modern policy approach called land value capture, which is put into practice around the world.
We are in the historic Five Points neighborhood in Denver, Colorado. This neighborhood in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s was called the Harlem of the West, where jazz greats would play because they couldn't stay downtown in white establishments. Since 2010, we've seen incredible gentrification happening. The land prices here have dramatically escalated.
As the Five Points neighborhood grappled with this change, Albus Brooks' colleague Brad Buchanan attended the annual Big City Planning Directors Institute, hosted by the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy.
It's just open sharing, best practices, epic failures, absolutely the most valuable learning and sharing for me all year round. I remember Martim from Brazil talking about the value capture approaches there, and that was the spark. And I remember running out at lunch and picking up the cell phone and calling Albus Brooks, the city councilman, and saying, Albus, our answer is in this.
In Belo Horizonte, Brazil, Maria Caldas waged a hard-won campaign to implement a new master plan for the city with value capture at its core.
Belo Horizonte é muito singular. É uma cidade que não tem para onde expandir seu território, então ela só pode adensar. Toda construção acima do coeficiente 1 irá comprar da sociedade esse direito. Ele pode ser aplicado para melhorar espaços públicos em determinados locais da cidade, ou ele irá para um fundo municipal de habitação.
In one neighborhood, the private sector created a shopping plaza to offer street vendors a centralized location. It was built in exchange for high-rise construction opportunities elsewhere in the city. The shopping mall strengthened the community and demonstrated the benefit of strong public-private collaboration.
Foi com o Lincoln que eu me aproximei dos conceitos, né, de captura de mais-valia, e o Lincoln foi um parceiro inestimável.
Back in Denver, inspired by the Lincoln Institute and Belo Horizonte, Brad and Albus saw an opportunity when their city decided to build a new commuter rail complex in the Five Points neighborhood.
We sat community, architects, developers, private sector at the table together to figure out what they wanted in their community, and they came up with, okay, we'll let you go up higher if we get some community benefit, you know, which Brad calls value capture, right?
But the truth is, the reason this development is happening is because of the public investment that happened. This has those developers, those investors who are going to make the returns, gets them to the table with their money to help solve those problems that the neighbors care about.
It's just incredible to feel and see that synergy. And I just think that's a special bond and relationship that has come out of all of this cool, sexy city building that we're able to do.
Fostering environments where people share ideas about land policy became a primary focus of the Lincoln Foundation. And it was John's son, David, who began funding land policy programs at schools in Claremont, California, Hartford, Connecticut, and Taiwan. More overseas initiatives would follow in Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Africa, demonstrating that the compelling idea of Henry George was applicable around the world. Like his father, David's work was anchored in fairness, and the idea that building respect between cultures and faiths was invaluable.
A better understanding of public finance, land economics, and taxation would ensure that more people have the same opportunities, whatever their lot in life.
In 1974, David created a freestanding organization to disseminate research, not just for academia, but for everyday decision makers and the general public, the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. The new institute became known as a convener, bringing practitioners of all stripes to Lincoln House in Cambridge, Massachusetts. From lawyers and tax judges to journalists and activists, all to share best practices and new ideas. In the 1970s and 80s, in the Dudley Street neighborhood of Boston, the community faced an all-too-common challenge: white flight to the suburbs.
People were leaving, small shop owners were leaving, and so as they left, the real estate value came down. With the decrease in value, many people found themselves underwater. At the same time, we started hearing about the city working with developers to think about development in our neighborhood, but nobody had consulted us. And so people were scared. We were both fighting for a cleaner, healthier neighborhood, while at the same time worried that somebody was going to come in, build in our neighborhood, and push us out. We established the Community Land Trust in 1988 to help the community take control and own, in fact, the land that it had helped to protect.
One of the main goals of the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative's Land Trust was to create perpetual affordable housing,
We allow for the homeowner to buy the improvements on the land, but not the land. They lease the land. And in the lease agreement, there is also a formula that dictates the resale value of that home. The Lincoln Institute of Land Policy was a real partner in supporting our community land trust. Lincoln allowed us to both conduct surveys and research to better understand some of the impacts of our land trust, and then to think about how we could maximize the land trust. Today we own about 36 acres of land that brings affordable housing, parks, playgrounds, open space, and farming into our neighborhood.
Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative, they are like the community land trust held on high for what can be accomplished. Nashville has this small town kind of feel and this tremendously huge heart. And now we are actually struggling with the fact that we're having the big city pressures.
When you start providing more capital into the city and tax advantages to some of the corporations, those same homes at one time that were affordable, now are no longer affordable. And so we partnered with Grounded Solutions to really help us to operationalize the Community Land Trust.
Grounded Solutions evolved from a national network of community land trusts established by Lincoln Institute to help these CLTs collaborate with each other and with their cities.
It really does need to be a partnership with the city. So Lincoln Institute put out the City CLT Partnership policy brief, and we've kind of been living by that ever since.
The city gave us 15 scattered sites around the city for us to develop the Community Land Trust properties. Housing is way more than just living there. It's about wealth creation. They use the equity to start businesses. They use the equity to send their kids to college. They use the equity to reinvest for retirement. Look at all of that, what a house is able to do. That's what this is all about for me, is how do we make a difference out there?
Katie Lincoln, David's daughter, has continued the work of broadening and strengthening the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy's partnerships at home and abroad. She has also focused on making land policy information even more accessible with the launch of a PBS documentary trilogy, interactive websites, online and print magazines, and podcasts.
Recognizes how government actions like this.
And as the impacts of climate change have begun affecting the lives of people around the world, Katie has focused the Lincoln Institute's resources on the issue of sustainability. As a resident of the desert Southwest, it became clear to Katie that land policy could also be leveraged to address one of climate change's most serious impacts: access to water.
We know that today's decisions about land are also decisions about water. The need to be aware of and act upon this interdependence is urgent.
And so in 2017, Katie established the Babbitt Center for Land and Water Policy, named after former Arizona Governor Bruce Babbitt. The center strengthened the Lincoln Institute's presence in the western U.S. and helps planners within the Colorado River Basin tackle water management issues in their communities, with the aim of expanding to help manage major water systems around the world. In Jefferson County, Colorado, planners were increasingly aware that something needed to change as new development stressed an already fragile environment.
With Colorado and Jefferson County being a popular destination, there can be some challenges related to providing infrastructure and resources, including a water supply.
Whether it's residential development, commercial, agricultural, industrial uses, water is a constant topic in our conversations.
So to better respond to the increasing demand on its resources, Jefferson County sent a delegation to the Babbitt Center's Growing Water Smart workshop.
One of the largest takeaways we had was to expand our water resources bubble a bit and making sure we had developed relationships with all the water providers in the county.
Jefferson County's water supply and context is so unique. We have public water providers, we have commercial areas that are entirely served by wells, so it really becomes complicated. Based on the lessons learned from the Growing Water Smart workshop and through outreach with the community, we really looked for a variety of ways to address water conservation and sustainability. We're not only evaluating the water availability right now for a proposed development, we're evaluating how that development might affect water availability in the future, not only here but also downriver in the Colorado River Basin and for generations to come.
That view towards the future and that spirit of collaboration are hallmarks of the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. 75 years after John Lincoln planted that seed, the Lincoln Institute continues to grow and evolve, advocating for land policy that creates climate-resilient communities, fairer tax systems, healthier people, and a more sustainable planet. It's a testament to Lincoln's global community that we can all work towards a better world, helping to nurture the life of an idea.